Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Leaves Konoha and Obtains Jiongu, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
You need chakra, child. Very well, I shall comply, for now. But this is merely the beginning. The statement seemed to echo in Naruto's dream, chilling him down to his very core. It had repeated every so often, like a haunting memory that Naruto couldn't quite place but knew he had heard before, the voice familiar and yet not at the same time. There was something about the voice that bothered him, but the 10-year-old couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, just that it seemed to radiate hatred and evil. Damnable seal. You're lucky I can't take control right now. Naruto looked around in search of the owner of the voice, but all he saw was an unending darkness. The last thing he could remember was talking to Shiromari. The giant chameleon had told Naruto to call upon him in a time of need, and then, nothing. I must have passed out, Naruto deduced. But that doesn't explain what's going on here. The blonde noticed that his dream appeared to lighten, casting just enough light to illuminate where he was. He seemed to be standing in several inches of water in what, his nose told him, must have been a sewer. A massive wrought iron gate stood in front of him, and Naruto took a small step forward in order to better make out the word, seal, inscribed on a piece of paper far above him. He looked around, but after noting nothing else, turned his attention back to the gate. Suddenly, two blood-red eyes opened wide, accompanied by the wide, feral maw of some beast behind the gate. "Let me out!" roared the creature, leaking out enough killer intent to make Naruto scream. Ah! Naruto shot up, instinctively grabbing for the kunai he normally kept by his bedroll and bringing it defensively to his chest. Kakuzu chose that moment to stroll in through the door. Naruto wondered absently, and loomed ominously over the bed. "You look rather stupid in that position with nothing in your hand," he commented idly. Naruto realized that the kunai he had attempted to grab was nothing but air, and so he lowered his arm and sat up further in the bed, a real bed. He grasped the blanket in one hand, running his hand over the soft padding of the mattress underneath as if to confirm that it was real. "Where are we?" Naruto asked. "That is unimportant. Tell me what happened." "It is important," Naruto insisted. "And I could ask you the same thing, what happened?" The two made eye contact for a solid minute before Kakuzu made a breathy sound that Naruto took to be a sigh of resigned frustration. "I rented a room for a night so you could recover. You exhausted your chakra practicing Kuchio's no jutsu yesterday, especially by summoning the chameleon boss. You have been asleep for almost a day. Now, what happened?" he demanded. The blonde was quiet as he collected his thoughts. "I want a sword," he said with finality, ignoring his teacher's question. "There is no basis for you needing a sword, nor a reason for bringing it up," Kakuzu replied curtly. "But think about it. How kick-ass would I be if I had a sword?" he rambled. "I could." "Your non sequitur bores me and evades my question," interrupted the older ninja. "Tell me what happened." Naruto thought about lying to avoid the subject, but then decided against it. Kakuzu could be rather intimidating when he chose to be, and his eyes seemed to be rising, a sure sign that screwing around with him was a bad idea. "When I summoned Shiromari-sama," he began slowly, "I thought I heard a voice in my head. It said something about me needing chakra, and that it would comply for now. Then," Naruto shrugged, "I was able to summon Shiromari-sama." Kakuzu began moving steadily around the room, a movement that Naruto would have described as pacing if it weren't for the fact that Kakuzu never paced. He seemed to be muttering something to himself, and Naruto caught the words, seal, chakra, and finally, Kyubi. His eyes became wide as saucers on the last word. "Wait, what? When is your birthday?" Kakuzu demanded seriously. "October 10th, he replied. "Why? And what about the Kyubi? Isn't it dead?" "So, it is as I suspected," Kakuzu muttered. "You are from Konoha," he stated coldly. Naruto gulped at how tense the room seemed to get at those words. The blonde shook his head nervously, suddenly aware that admitting such a fact was probably not the best idea. "No, I'm not. Your birthday coincides with the date that the Kyubi attacked Konoha. So, what does that have to do with anything?" Kakuzu shot him a glance. "You are the Jinchuriki of the legendary Kyubi no Yoko." Naruto was stunned. What? No, the fourth Hokage killed it. The blonde was interrupted by Kakuzu's throaty laugh. His teacher chuckled for a bit before settling himself imposingly in front of Naruto's bed. I have been in contact with a representative of several persons who have a vested interest in the Bijuu, Kakuzu began with an imperial air. As a result, I have become acquainted with a good degree of knowledge about them. First of all, you have a massive chakra supply, one that will most likely surpass my own once you reach your fullest potential. Secondly, those whisker-like markings on your cheeks are a trait of the Kyuubi within you, which most Jinchuriki possess. And I have already explained the third part, you are from Konoha and share a birthday with the anniversary of the Kyuubi's so-called death. Incidentally, the Bijuu are unable to be killed. He paused briefly before concluding, I believe that should be enough evidence to satisfy you. The younger ninja remained silent for a moment, absorbing the information. Finally, so, the voice in my head. Is the Kyuubi attempting to make contact with you? Kakuzu confirmed. What else? He asked quietly. What else do you know about the Bijuu, or these Jinchuriki, Kakuzu supplied, are the human hosts who have a Bijuu sealed inside of them. He reached into one of his sleeves and rummaged around, pulling out a photograph and holding it up for Naruto to see. The girl depicted had mint green hair and pupil-less orange eyes, and wore tattered street clothing that covered bronze skin. This is Fu, the host of the Nanabi no Kabutamushi from Takagaku. One of my contacts took this picture and passed it along to me. Naruto carefully took the picture from Kakuzu, staring at it intently. After a minute, he folded it carefully and set it on the dresser next to the bed. Teacher and student were silent until the blonde could no longer bear it. Do you hate me? He asked carefully, avoiding eye contact. Should I? Everyone else did, mumbled the blonde. I presume that you are referring to the people of Konoha. Naruto nodded, prompting Kakuzu to continue. From what I have heard, Jinchuriki are often hated and or feared by the people of their country because they are often reminded of the demon within and of nothing else. Having been unaffected by the Kyuubi's attack, I have no reason to scorn you. You have proven yourself to be a valuable commodity, and I see no reason currently to discontinue our arrangement. After a brief pause, Kakuzu inquired, I can only assume that is the reason you left Konoha. Yeah, Naruto replied. Everyone there hated me. I thought it was because my family did something and then were killed. But now, Naruto's fist clenched the blanket in anger, I find out it was because of the Kyuubi, this monster that lives inside of me. I was protecting them from it. He insisted. Kakuzu nodded. You will discover that the stupidity of people knows no bounds. Your good deeds will often go unnoticed and indeed be scorned, even if it is undeserved. Angry at having discovered the real reason behind his isolation in Konoha, Naruto wasn't quite thinking very clearly when he scoffed, what do you know about scorn? The statement was like a catalyst. Naruto choked as Kakuzu's hand shot out and latched around his throat, gripping tightly before slowly retracting towards the bounty hunter. Kakuzu brought Naruto up to his face, strange green eyes as hard as diamonds and staring into Naruto's scared blue orbs. Do not, he began, speaking low and slow, pretend to understand what I have been through. I know more of scorn than you ever will, he continued in a dangerous tone, so do not think that your status as a Jinchuriki makes you special. Naruto's hand scrambled frantically for purchase on Kakuzu's much larger one, his face starting to turn blue from lack of oxygen. After another few seconds of letting the blonde try to pry his hand free, Kakuzu relaxed his grip, allowing his student to collapse to the floor and gulp in great mouthfuls of much-needed air. You have learned your lesson, Kakuzu stated coolly. Naruto could only nod, not quite ready to use his voice yet. The mercenary waited another couple of minutes before saying in a voice that left no room for argument, tell me of your past. The blonde jerked in surprise before staring at his teacher with wide eyes. Do not assume I care for your background, Kakuzu told him in the same cold tone, I am merely curious. I don't really remember much, Naruto admitted quietly. There was an orphanage that I stayed at, but I was always ignored by the people in charge, and the other kids never really hung out with me. I remember a lot of hatred, he reminisced softly, but I could never figure out why. I snuck into the library when I could to try and teach myself to read and write, and sometimes to figure out why everybody hated me, but I didn't get far and couldn't find anything. The shopkeepers always glared at me and chased me out, and most of the ninja ignored me. I remembering deciding that my family must have done something really bad, gotten removed from all the books, and that I was the only one left. That's when I left, and met you. Naruto lapsed into silence after his tale, and Kakuzu seemed to stare right through him as he digested the boy's story. At length, the bounty hunter said Naruto's name. The Jinchuriki looked up at his mentor, reading nothing on Kakuzu's face. You remind me of me, he said finally. Naruto inhaled sharply at this. What? When I was an elite jonin, Kakuzu began, the elders of Takagakure assigned me a special mission. I was told to kill the Shodai Hokage. Naruto's wide blue eyes grew larger at this pronouncement. What? You heard me, Kakuzu said. Now be quiet, brat. Naruto fell silent at this demand, and his teacher took a moment to recompose himself before continuing. I snuck into the village proper and attempted to assassinate him, but I failed. I led him on a chase to the location known now as the Valley of the End. We clashed there, just the two of us, but despite my prowess in Suiten techniques, intelligence, and relatively large chakra reserves, I was soundly defeated by Senju Hashirama and his powerful Mokuton techniques. A unique Kekkei Genkai that allowed him to manipulate wood, he clarified, seeing Naruto about to ask. It made him the most powerful and feared shinobi of the day. I returned to my village after attempting to complete this impossible task, and what was I greeted with? Naruto remained silent, sure that this was a rhetorical question. He was proven right a moment later when Kakuzu roared, scorn, his ire raised by the reminder of his past. Threads erupted from his body in a display of his brief lapse in control before he calmed down, returning to the stiff, rigid man Naruto normally saw him as. My village believed that I did not try hard enough and punished me for failing in my objective. For years, I had served that village faithfully and with complete dedication, taking any task that was asked of me. This blatant disrespect for all of my servitude infuriated and offended me, so I left. But I did not go without prizes, he added with an unseen malevolent grin. Kakuzu held out his right arm, pulling back the sleeve to reveal dark flesh embroidered with sutures. Something wriggled underneath his skin like live snakes before popping out of a large stitch on his forearm, revealing themselves to be black threads. I stole Takagakure's most precious treasures, the Kinjutsu Jiongu, and the hearts of the village elders, who did not appreciate my service to their precious village, he hissed sadistically. This, he concluded, pointing at the slash across his waterfall forehead protector, was the final separation between me and my village. That is when my current life truly began. His narrative finished, Kakuzu waited for Naruto to digest the tale before speaking again. Naruto, he stated, do you understand why our histories are comparable? The blonde nodded slowly, prompting taller shinobi to continue. It is up to you what you will do now. What do you mean? We have been associated for 5 years now. Now that you know my history, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you return to your village, or any village, and attempt to capitalize on this information, or will you stay here with me? You do not yet have a name among Nukkinen, and it would be understandable if you wished to regain some semblance of a normal life, though if you spoke of me I would be forced to kill you. I'm staying, Naruto told him firmly. I'm not afraid of your threats. You're the first person to ever take the time to teach me anything, sometimes, and I still have a lot more to learn. Besides, he added darkly, if Konoha didn't want me, then I don't want it. I wanna show everyone there that they should be afraid of me. Kakuzu remained silent as a slow smirk stretched across his mouth. It was fortunate that the blonde had chosen to stay, because the alternative would have resulted in his pupil's death, Jinchuriki or no. He couldn't have anyone going around spilling his secrets, after all, and the boy's body would fetch a high price if his death was necessary. He will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. How amusing. Then it is time to create another link between us. Come here. Naruto stepped forward as the bounty hunter remained stationary. After several seconds of doing nothing, the blonde noticed a large bulge moving from Kakuzu's upper arm to his forearm, finally reaching the stitch in his forearm before slowly being expelled by several black threads. Kakuzu grabbed the object with his left hand, pulling it out and revealing it to be a small scroll. The tall man bent down and placed it on the floor, unraveling it to reveal an older parchment with a black ring inscribed in the center. Do you trust me? Kakuzu asked. Yeah. Kakuzu nodded. Simply place your palm within the circle, he ordered. The 10-year-old gulped nervously, but nodded in understanding. He knelt down to place his right hand directly within the black ring. it glowed blue momentarily, and the kanji for Jiongu appeared in it as Kakuzu took several large steps backwards. That was when a veritable mass of black threads erupted from the black ring and between his fingers, shooting upwards in a seemingly endless stream. They seemed to hit a peak, stopping in midair only to angle downwards with Naruto as the focal point. The blonde almost stepped backwards, but Kakuzu's commanding bark of "stay still" stopped him. The next thing Naruto knew, someone was screaming. It took a moment to realize that it was him screaming, the sound continuous and racked with pain. The threads were burying into his body, completely bypassing his clothing and tearing into every inch of skin available below the neck. The entire process only took a minute, but to Naruto it seemed to last an eternity. When it was over, he laid in a ball on the ground, body spasming and voice hoarse from screaming. Kakuzu stepped forward and rolled the scroll back up, allowing the threads within his body to wrap around it and pull it back into hiding. "I would have warned you, but I believe that experience is the hallmark of learning," Kakuzu announced from above him, and Naruto could practically hear the sadistic glee dripping from the bounty hunter's voice. Kakuzu bent down and lifted Naruto's left arm, pulling back the sleeve of the gray shirt he wore to reveal a thick black band inked into the boy's skin, halfway between the wrist and elbow of each arm. "This is the sign that you now possess Jiongu," Kakuzu declared. "This is Takagaku's most precious technique, greater than even the fabled hero's water of old, and you are now the second person to be granted its power. You have a year to gain control of it, and I will not train you how to use it. Like me, you will struggle to understand its power, but I believe that you have the potential to utilize it successfully. If you cannot use it by the end of a year, I will strip it from you, a process which may kill you. Take the time to recover while you can, I have to meet with someone." With that, he left the room. The mercenary wandered past his and Naruto's normal training grounds, entering the forest and walking to where Shiromari had been summoned the previous day. Upon reaching the spot, he held his arm out, allowing one thread to wriggle free from his body and deposit something into his hand. He stared at the object, a tiny black seed, for a moment before channeling his chakra into it and letting it fall to the ground. It only took 15 seconds to get the response he was waiting for. "What do you want?" spoke the dark voice of Zetsu from behind him. Kakuzu turned around slowly, no longer surprised at Zetsu's strange ability to merge with and meld out of anything and everything. "You told me I could contact you when I deemed it necessary by pushing my chakra into this seed," Kakuzu intoned. "I am slightly surprised to find that it worked," he added as an afterthought. Zetsu snorted. "You still doubt my abilities, after all this time? If I give you information, you should trust that the information is accurate. Now, what do you want?" he repeated. Kakuzu took a moment to note that Zetsu's white half was unusually silent, theorizing that the seed ability was perhaps unique only to Black Zetsu, which meant that the two halves could actually function independently. Suddenly Zetsu's usefulness and power became even clearer. "I require your assistance in finding someone. I believe that Akatsuki's contacts trumps mine in sheer quantity, meaning you have a better source of quality at your disposal for information. Who are you looking for?" Zetsu demanded, cutting straight to the chase. Kakuzu told him, and a sinister smile spread over white Zetsu's lips, the only motion he had made thus far. "I know just the person you want to find," Black Zetsu told him, the mirth evident in his voice. LLL. Kakuzu wasn't kidding when he said it would be a struggle to understand Jiongu, thought Naruto. It had been 3 months since the former Taki Nin had bestowed the kinjutsu upon his student, and the first week had been spent in a struggle with the pain caused by the technique. Kakuzu had moved them out of the hotel room after that first night, a waste of money, he commented dismissively with a wave of his hand, and Naruto had spent that next week trying to use the technique and collapsing in agony. All the while, his teacher had watched him mutely. The bounty hunter had also been serious when he said that he wouldn't train Naruto in the ability. Arguably, it wasn't all that different from his regular teaching methodology, but Jiongu was also far more difficult to understand than the basics of taijutsu or elemental ninjutsu. Naruto was all on his own as far as a training schedule and what to practice, which meant he didn't have to hear Kakuzu's mocking sneers and dry sarcasm with respect to his talents and progress, though he wondered if that wouldn't have been preferable to the silence. So far, Naruto had done very little with respect to using the black threads now within his body, though not really by choice. They seemed to retain some semblance of autonomy, almost sentience, and so he had spent the past 3 months attempting to find a way to control them. He was currently standing in front of a tree, shirtless, with one arm outstretched in front on his body. Focusing intently upon the tree, several threads shot out from the bands on his arms and pierced the trunk in places that Naruto imagined were vital spots on the average human male. You seem to be making progress, brat. Naruto turned around to see his mentor standing behind him, arms folded across his chest. Yeah, he asked, excited. How long did it take you to do that? I would prefer not to embarrass you on such a prolific occasion, returned the hunter idly. When Naruto scowled, Kakuzu unfolded his arms and stepped towards the blonde. I came to let you know that I must venture out to find someone. I do not know when I will return. That's unusually vague, Naruto commented, eyebrow quirked in suspicion. His teacher normally gave him an idea of where he was going, or who he was hunting, or something. To hear none of that was strange. It is, agreed Kakuzu before turning away, elaborating no further. And there was one more thing. Before Naruto could ask what it was, Kakuzu had spun around and launched his hand forward, grabbing a kunai from the pouch on Naruto's thigh and bringing it in an upward arc at Naruto's arm. The blonde didn't even have time to react as Kakuzu used a combination of his monstrous strength and wind chakra to cleave straight through his arm, just below the elbow. His deed done, Kakuzu dropped the kunai, leaving Naruto staring at his arm on the ground. The blonde attempted to say something, yell at Kakuzu, scream in pain, but nothing came out. He remained mesmerized as, in the next second, threads popped out from the end of his arm on the ground and the stump of his arm still attached to his body. They mingled together and pulled the severed appendage from the forest floor to Naruto's forearm, disappearing under his skin. A band of stitch marks, an exact replica of the location of one of Kakuzu's, was the only thing left to show that the arm had ever been detached in the first place. Naruto looked up to either yell or thank Kakuzu, he wasn't entirely sure which, but the other ninja had already disappeared. LLL. It took about a month and a half of Kakuzu's precious time, but after following Zetsu's directions, he finally found who he was looking for. I have a request to make of you, he told the taller of the two men in front of him. The giant of a man listened to Kakuzu's request with a bored expression, but by the end he was grinning broadly. You've got yourself a deal, newbie, accepted the other man, his evil smirk revealing row upon row of sharp teeth. I'm always up for fresh meat. Naruto bent low, performing a picture-perfect sweep kick on his imaginary opponent. He immediately raised his left arm, the one Kakuzu had cut off 6 months prior, and prompted several threads to shoot out from the stitches and pierce the air. They moved in a downward arc and stuck into a tree, spread out in a fashion such that a real person would be pinned spread eagle into the trunk. Naruto walked forward, hand still outstretched, and pulled out a kunai, applying a small amount of wind chakra and holding it up to his pretend foe's throat. Game, set, and match, he pronounced with a grin. You seem to have acquired an acceptable amount of control over Jiongu, brat, though perhaps you should consider fighting against an adversary who can actually fight back. Kakuzu, you're back, greeted Naruto, turning around to face his mentor. And you brought a friend, he noted slyly. Hardly, snorted the mercenary, dropping the corpse of a white-haired male wearing Anbu armor from his shoulder. He rolled said shoulder lazily and cracked his neck, the sound echoing in the quiet clearing. The trip to Kirigakure was well worth the bounty this one will fetch. You were gone a long time, huffed Naruto, plopping to the ground and poking the missed Anbu idly with his foot. Kakuzu cuffed him from afar, his student not even flinching from the hit. I would like to see you penetrate Kirigakure's defenses with your measly skills, retorted the hunter. Considering how difficult it is to get into the country, remain inconspicuous, find and capture the target, and then escape without raising suspicion, 2 months is hardly a long time. I expect you will take at least 6 your first time. Naruto agreed absently. Why the hell did you lug him all the way back without a sealing scroll anyway? I enjoy carrying the weight of my victims' bodies personally, he claimed, a tinge of pleased sadism in his voice. There is a high degree of satisfaction in carrying the amount of money you are to be compensated on your back. Perhaps you will understand in time, when you are stronger. Naruto harumphed unhappily, but let the acerbic comment go. Come, intoned Kakuzu, reaching down to pick up the corpse. You have had 9 months to train with Jiongu, and it looks as if you are ready for the next step. Really? Exclaimed Naruto. What's the next step? And where are we going? He continued, jumping up and skipping up to Kakuzu's side. Kakuzu shot him a look that the blonde chose to ignore. After a moment, the bounty hunter said, I plan on cashing in my prize. Then we are going to continue your training. I thought you weren't gonna help me with my training, Naruto chirped innocently. Kakuzu's look turned into a full-on glare. He reached over and shoved the blonde sideways with enough force to make Naruto impact a nearby tree and fall to the ground. Do not look a gift horse in the mouth, brat. When you get something free, take it, judge its usefulness, and then keep it or sell it. Now get up and shut up. Naruto pulled himself off of the ground and shook his head. He thought that he detected a hint of mirth in his teacher's voice but paid it no heed, too busy watching the swirling, colored dots dance in front of his eyes. LLL. Naruto would never understand what idiot came up with the idea of putting an bounty exchange station within a bathroom. Granted, the smell of the bathroom would likely hide the stench of any corpses brought in, but still, a bathroom. He held back a gag as Kakuzu tapped on the wall between two urinals, revealing a bald man with a dark mustache and goatee, a deep scar above his right eyebrow. The man stared at Kakuzu and Naruto for only a moment over the rim of his trench coat before turning around and beckoning them to enter. Kakuzu greeted the man, walking over to the wall and pulling out a drawer. It's been some time. I see you even brought your protégé back this time. Naruto, right. The blonde nodded as he and his teacher stepped forward to the open drawer, which turned out to be a sturdy table. You would do well to remember his name, Zange, retorted Kakuzu brusquely. He is well on his way to becoming a capable bounty hunter, meaning that you will have increased interaction with him in the future. Zange merely nodded, gesturing for Kakuzu to lay the corpse on the table. The former Taki Nin complied silently. I will keep it in mind. Now, who do we have today? The scarred man pulled out a bingo book and began rifling through its pages, reaching the section for Kirigakure and beginning to flip slower. Oh, it looks like you brought in a big haul, Kakuzu. Hozuki Mangetsu, Anbu rank, and a member of the 7 shinobi swordsmen of the mist, Kumogakure and Kasagakure both put 65 million ryo on his head. He must have been quite the fight. It was well worth the reward, returned Kakuzu. Brat, he stated, turning his attention to Naruto, we are headed to the land of Earth next. Pick a target from this while I count the money, he ordered, tossing Naruto his own bingo book. Naruto flipped slowly through the pages in an imitation of his teacher, who was fingering through the money Zange had handed him in a briefcase. After several minutes, Naruto turned the book towards Kakuzu, pointing at the right page. He stated simply. Kakuzu looked up from the wad of cash in his hands, staring intently at the page before inclining his head in a brief nod. Shortly thereafter, the locking click of the briefcase could be heard. We shall be on our way, Kakuzu bade Zange. The scarred man nodded in understanding, showing Kakuzu and Naruto to the door before closing it discreetly behind him. Let us go, intoned the mercenary with a swish of his cloak. LLL. It only took a couple of hours of clipped travel to cross through the land of grass and reach the border of the land of earth from where the exchange point was stationed, but Naruto was grateful for the time. Kakuzu had spent a lot of time drilling into his head that he needed to think things through, but even still, it was difficult to do so unless it was quiet. The blonde knew that this wasn't a normal hunt. Despite having been on only 2 bounty chases, Kakuzu had only accompanied him once, and the 11-year-old hadn't chosen the target in either case. The handling of the bingo book had been the first indication that something was different about this particular case. Most of the time, Kakuzu just told Naruto where he was going and who he was to capture. Suspicious, Naruto had purposefully chosen a low-valued target, barely a jonin and worth next to nothing. On any other occasion, Kakuzu wouldn't have even wasted his time with such a pointless mission, and more likely than not would have attempted to beat the ever-loving shit out of Naruto for even suggesting the hunt. But to say nothing and merely nod his acceptance of the blonde's choice. Something was up, and Naruto was determined to find out what. Hey, Kakuzu, why we going after this guy? You chose him, replied the tall man curtly. When he didn't elaborate, Naruto decided to try again. Yeah, but, you never go for these small fries. So why you suddenly all for it? Kakuzu smirked beneath his mask. So you knew. The blonde nodded. I just don't understand why. Kakuzu halted suddenly, the action surprising Naruto. Have you ever wondered how I am able to utilize all 5 elements? Years of practice and experience. Shrugged Naruto unsily. The mercenary snorted. That is one component, yes. However, the original abilities are a power of the black threads that now course through your body. It took a moment to digest exactly what the older ninja was saying. You mean, Jiongu gave you that power? His teacher rolled his eyes. Precisely. Jiongu has far more uses than you have discovered thus far, and you're not taking full advantage of them is an embarrassment. This, he continued, unzipping and throwing off the trench coat he always wore, is what we are after. Naruto gaped unashamedly at Kakuzu's back. Stitches, prized marks of the kinjutsu stolen years ago from the hidden waterfall, crisscrossed his body, turning him into a parody of some demented ragdoll. The truly impressive feature was the 4 animal masks, Anbu masks, he realized, held seamlessly in place on his back. Each of these, lectured Kakuzu, contains the heart of an opponent I have fought and killed. Continually replacing them has allowed me to extend my life and use the remaining 4 nature chakras. Now, he finished, shrugging his cloak back on, it is your turn. We are traveling to the land of Earth so that you can begin to use this secondary function of Jiongu. Why? Managed Naruto. Kakuzu chose to read through the subtext and answer his pupil's real question. You are wind-natured, which means you are naturally weak against fire users and strong against lightning users. To support your weaknesses, you will require Sutan and Doton-aligned hearts in order to properly cover the gamut of elemental chakra. Now let us continue, you know how I hate wasting time. Naruto trudged along just slightly behind Kakuzu, his mind caught in a daze from trying to process all of the new information he'd been presented. If his teacher was going to give some sort of long-winded dissertation every time he answered a question, Naruto was probably better off not asking some things. LLL. So, now that you've told me why we're in the land of Earth, does it really matter who I target? No, Kakuzu responded. You did choose a rather pathetic target, one not even worthy of our time, he added dryly. Bite me, retorted the blonde, flinching seconds later as Kakuzu shot him a chilly glare that promised pain. So, he drawled nervously, staring at the rocky terrain of the land of Earth and counting the border guards, now what? Pick one of the pathetic shinobi in front of you to fight, and I will dispatch of the remainder, Kakuzu answered lowly, a manic glint entering his eyes. Naruto shuddered. He had noticed over the years that Kakuzu had rather frequent homicidal urges, and while the frequency with which he attacked Naruto had declined over time, he suspected that the reason the bounty hunter had a habit of being gone more than he was present was to satiate his murderous desires. The 11-year-old almost felt sorry for the rock chunin on border patrol. He nodded to show he understood, and then both ninja moved. Naruto veered slightly to the right, aiming for the chunin furthest from the rest. Kakuzu, noticing this, followed the blonde slightly, cutting off the other 4 Iwanin from Naruto's target. You have to get past me first, grinned Kakuzu, his skin darkening. Show me your worth. Meanwhile, Naruto cornered his own prey, a young man in his late teens with sandy brown hair and green eyes. Said orbs flickered intermittently in Kakuzu's direction, where Naruto could only presume his teacher was making short work of the other ninja. After allowing this action to continue for a couple of minutes, Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. Yano, maybe you should pay attention to your real opponent. His words seemed to galvanize the Iwanin, who suddenly became more focused on the blonde. He ran through a short string of hand seals, putting his hands to the ground and causing several spires to rise from it. Naruto jumped to the right before leaping back to his original spot as more earthen spires erupted from the ground, reaching with one hand towards his weapon's pouch. How have you not finished yet? Called Kakuzu, interrupting Naruto's shuriken throw, all of which embedded themselves in a rock near his opponent. Kakuzu, shouted Naruto. Shut up. This guy's annoying. I put up with you, do I not? He returned idly, inspecting one of his nails to emphasize his boredom. Naruto growled, the noise evolving into a raspy scream of frustration that began to erupt from the back of his throat. The Iwanin, sensing opportunity, jetted forward with a kunai extended for Naruto's neck. He never made it there. 10 feet away from the blonde, Naruto whipped around and threw forward his right arm, the black tendrils of Jiongu bursting forth and ensnaring the Iwanin. The teenager dropped his kunai as the threads wrapped securely around his wrists, ankles, and throat, completely restricting his movement and holding him aloft. Now what? Glared Naruto at his mentor. Use the power I have granted you to take his heart and make it one with your chakra system. Jiongu will know what to do. The green eyes of Naruto's captive widened at this proclamation, while the blonde merely shrugged. Naruto raised his left arm, allowing the black threads to slither out from the suture there. They shot forward suddenly, burying into the Iwanin's chest and causing him to gag. After a few seconds, the light dimmed from his eyes and the threads emerged, a pulsating something encased in the grasp. The bundle disappeared into Naruto's arm, and the blonde could feel a new power flooding through him. Whoa! Take off your shirt, commanded Kakuzu suddenly. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the abruptness of the order but did as he was told, removing both the vest and shirt he wore. Kakuzu stepped up behind him, holding something up to his back for a matter of seconds before removing his hand. It is done, he intoned. Naruto wished he had a mirror. What's done? He asked, annoyed. I covered up your new acquisition with a mask. I assumed that you would not want blood and organs to go unprotected, he deadpanned, and so took the liberty of getting extra Anbu masks. Jiongu took care of the semantics. The blonde turned and stared at the taller ninja, understanding dawning in his eyes. You mean, those last bounties? Do not read into my actions, brat, Kakuzu defended haughtily. I killed those Anbu because they were well worth the cost. The masks just ended up being additional perks. Now come, Hozuki's mask still requires a suit and heart to house. LLL. Naruto looked around as Kakuzu came to a halt, the clearing they were currently in quite serene. A waterfall fell gently into a smooth lake, the peaceful feeling in the area relaxing Naruto's nerves. The new power he felt coursing through him had been somewhat overwhelming during the trek out of the land of Earth. If you want me to get a suit and heart, shouldn't we keep going to Kirigakure? He asked. No, came the blunt response. As I mentioned before, Kirigakure is far away and very difficult to infiltrate. This place will serve two purposes. The blonde looked around, attempting to find something special about the clearing. Stumped, he sighed and bit down his pride. And where exactly is this place? This, Kakuzu presented with mock grandiosity, is the renowned secret entrance to Takagakure. His pupil looked at him in slight disbelief, causing the bounty hunter to rub the bridge of his nose in irritation. There is a reason Takagakure is named as such, brat, he ground out. Naruto eyed the waterfall, his mouth forming an O of understanding. Kakuzu rolled his eyes in frustration, thinking how fortunate it was for Naruto that killing the group of Iwanin had satisfied his homicidal urges. He reached into a sleeve and pulled out a picture, holding it up so Naruto could see. This is Tamura Tadao. He was my contact within the village for information, but he has outlived his usefulness. The blonde studied the picture, noting the man's features just as Kakuzu had told him to long ago. He possessed a slim face with blue hair and sulphurous yellow-green eyes, greediness glinting in their poisonous depths. If he was your contact, why do you want me to kill him? This bastard is trying to blackmail me, growled the former Taki Nin, and I do not allow such foolishness to go unpunished. He thinks that I will pay him a ridiculous sum of money in order to prevent him from telling the village about my existence and activities. Then why don't you kill him? My presence within my home village would not be an inconspicuous one, he snorted, and I do not believe I could control myself if I returned. There is a reason why there are no witnesses to any bounty hunting trips I take. You would do well to follow the same procedure. I guess I can do you this favor, the blonde acquiesced at last, grinning slyly. Tell me what to do. LLL. Naruto surfaced from the pool and gasped for air, immediately regretful of trying to make the mission out to be a bigger deal than it was. That bastard Kakuzu didn't tell me how long I would have to hold my breath for. I'll kill him. He hoisted himself from the water, dragging a briefcase out behind him. Fully out, he shook himself off and looked around. The pool he had come up in was one of several, waterfalls trickling into all of them. Short grass littered the area, and a few trees were growing intermittently some distance away. Naruto placed the briefcase on the grass beside him, unfastening the locks and checking the contents. He heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the money Kakuzu had received from Zange was still safe and dry. The blonde had asked his teacher for the briefcase in order to solidify the image of paying the blackmail ransom. Kakuzu had very reluctantly handed over the money, but not after telling him in vivid detail what he would do to the blonde if all the cash wasn't there upon his return. Naruto shuddered, the images were not pleasant. He got to his feet and picked up the briefcase, wandering aimlessly to the right. After 20 minutes of walking, he paused, sharp eyes catching sight of something interesting. Two teenage boys, obviously ninja, were picking on a third kid who looked to be about Naruto's age. They looked to be content with simply verbally abusing the third person until one of the boys shoved the other party. The kid tried countering, but that opened the way for the two boys to start physically beating on him. Suddenly the blonde heard a snicker not far away, and swiveled his head, finally managing to pinpoint an adult hidden carefully within a clump of bushes 100 feet away from the kids. Naruto eyed him carefully, noting blue hair and an angular jaw. That's the one, he thought. Naruto approached the man, clearing his throat to capture his attention. Sulphurous yellow-green eyes turned to face him, wide in surprise. Tamura Tadao. Naruto posed. Who's asking? Replied the man in a reedy whine. His voice grated on Naruto's ears, and the blonde was forced to visibly contain his flinch. Kakuzu sent me, he stated brusquely. I have the money. Ah, good, grinned Tadao. Let me see the briefcase. Naruto placed the briefcase down and unlocked it, turning it around so it opened towards the informant. The man's eyes lit up in excitement, allowing Naruto a moment to focus on the group of fighting children. Only the third kid was left, lying motionless on the ground. Well, it looks like it's all here, said Tadao in his high voice. Naruto heard the click of the briefcase locks as the Taki Nin closed it, deciding that now was the time to act. Pleasure doing business with. Naruto reached out with his right hand and grabbed the man's throat. Ah, blissful silence, he sighed. His eyes hardened and he brought the man right up to his face in the closest imitation of his teacher that he could muster. Kakuzu sends his regards, he whispered wickedly. Then he thrust his left hand forward, threads bursting forth just like with the Iwa Nin. Tadao's eyes widened and then glazed over as the threads stole his heart and assimilated it into Naruto's system. He dropped the corpse of the informant as power flooded his body again, causing him to moan. The blonde rubbed his forehead to try and stave off the headache he felt coming. Okay, there should really be a label for side effects on that scroll, he groaned. Suddenly, a kunai was at his throat. Who are you, and why did you kill this man? Demanded a tomboyish voice. Naruto mentally berated himself for dropping his guard. He felt the kunai tickle his skin and realized that he had yet to answer the question. This man was a traitor to your village, he explained, deciding that half-truths might just get him through this. Say you're right, retorted the voice after a short pause, that would imply that you don't even belong to the village. Where's your allegiance? Naruto gulped slightly. He preferred to kill only when necessary, or worthwhile, as far as bounty hunting went, and judging by the voice behind him, his captor was too young to be worth any significant reward. He began to work the black tendrils in his body towards attacking his opponent, waiting for the right moment. I have no village allegiance, he hazarded, stalling in the meantime. The person behind him was silent for a moment, and Naruto figured he or she was mulling over his answer. He stayed perfectly still until he heard his captor groan, the hand with the kunai retracting just a hair. That was enough for him. The blonde quickly threw up his right arm, pushing away the kunai and leaping away in one swift movement. He turned around to see his opponent, a thin, tanned child around his age with light green hair, clutching his or her stomach in pain. The kid groaned, and Naruto felt something prickle his conscience. Kakuzu's gonna kill me, he sighed. Are you okay? He tried. Do I look okay? Snapped the kid, the voice, while tomboyish, now distinctly female. Not particularly, shrugged the blonde. Hey, you look familiar, he realized. It took a minute of staring before it finally clicked. Naruto reached into one of his many pockets and pulled out a battered photo. He held it up next to the girl and ordered her to lift her head up. She looked up so Naruto could see her face, and he gasped when he saw a black bruise painted around one of her orange eyes. You're the Jinchuriki. Fu, right. Another moment, then, hey, you were the one being picked on earlier. Your powers of deduction are astounding, she grit out. How do you know I'm a Jinchuriki? Naruto nudged the body of Tadao. He was an informant for my mentor, he finished after a pause. Why were those kids picking on you? Fu scoffed. You wouldn't understand. The blonde was silent for a long time. At length, he spoke in a solemn voice. They think you're a monster. They blame you for the deaths the Bijuu inside of you caused. You're the target of all of their pent-up rage and hatred. Worst of all, you can't defend yourself, because then people think that you're attacking them. Am I close? All Fu could do was stare at him in wonder. How do I know? He finished rhetorically. He looked down quietly in shame, as if debating what to say. I know because I'm just like you. I am the host to the QB. Fu was too stunned to speak. Naruto watched as her eyes seemed to go blank for several seconds. After a moment, they seemed to refocus and she removed her hand from her stomach, where it had been resting to quell the pain. You're telling the truth, she whispered in awe. I never thought I'd meet another person like me, someone who shares my pain and understands. You believe me, just like that? He questioned skeptically. She smiled wryly. I spoke to the bug. At Naruto's inquiring gaze, she elaborated, Nanabi no Kabutamushi. Apparently he was reacting to the presence of the QB and that's why I was in pain. He wasn't quite sure how to respond to that. Then, suddenly, an idea occurred to him. Are you accepted in this village? Not really, she replied. Why? No real reason, he shrugged carelessly, but if you're looking for acceptance, I think I know a place where you can find it. Interested? LLL. Kakuzu strode, he never paced back and forth in the clearing his blonde pupil had left well over an hour ago. It wasn't that he was worried about him, but the idiot did have his money. Tadao shouldn't have proven to be such a big problem, but if Naruto had gotten caught, even a platoon of elite Taki Nin, as few as they were, might have been able to overwhelm him with his limited experience. That brat has 5 minutes before I go in there and take off his head for losing my money. Fortunately, Kakuzu didn't have to wait that long. After 3 minutes, bubbles began to form in the middle of the water, attracting his attention. Moments after, Naruto's blonde head burst through the surface, followed by several deep gasps of air. Brat, growled Kakuzu, where is my money? The black briefcase containing Kakuzu's cash flew through the air and landed on the bank next to the tall man. Good, he stated after checking the contents. Now hurry up. I do not wish to dally here any longer than necessary. That was when a second head burst through the water, also taking in gulps of air. Kakuzu immediately began preparing a powerful technique to take care of the intruder, but Naruto spluttered wait. Caused Kakuzu to pause in curiosity. He waited until Naruto and the other person swam to shore and flopped onto the bank, chests heaving in rhythm. Kakuzu's green eyes stared with piercing intensity at the other person before switching the gaze purely to his pupil. You little shit, he hissed, what did you do? Naruto coughed up a lungful of water before answering. I took out your guy and brought back Takagaku's third best secret, the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi. Aren't you proud? He smirked. Kakuzu hauled the blonde up by his collar, bringing him within inches of his face and leaking powerful killer intent. What was your intention by bringing this pest out with you? I thought that, maybe, you could help train her, like you kinda did with me. Do not presume to speak for me, you insolent pest. Snarled the mercenary. You were the first student I have ever taken on, and until you have earned your keep, I will consider even that a mistake. I will not allow you to drag me into training another useless, annoying sack of flesh. Before Naruto could protest, Fu's voice cut through Kakuzu's rant. You never told me that Kakuzu was your teacher, Naruto. Her voice was a mixture of fear and awe, and Kakuzu dropped Naruto carelessly onto the grass before walking over to her. The bounty hunter leaned in close, appearing to inspect her before saying in a dangerously low tone, what have you heard of me, little girl? Only what the history books have told us, shrugged Fu. That after becoming a great ninja and then failing to assassinate the Shodai Hokage, you betrayed the village, but not before stealing Jiongu, and, the heart of some guy. Dunno, that part was pretty vague. But you're an inspiration to me. Kakuzu raised one eyebrow. Most people do not have such a reaction to my deeds and actions. My name's Fu, and I hate Taki as much as I think you do. Naruto gave me something to believe in, where before I only experienced pain and misery. She removed her hate from where it was wrapped around her arm and scored it with a kunai, symbolizing the end of her village affiliation. Will you take me on as a second apprentice, Kakuzu-sensei? Kakuzu punched her head, but was surprised when the Fu in front of him burst into a cloud of dust. Interesting trick, he called aloud to the surrounding foliage. It's part of my Bijuu's abilities, returned Fu's voice. Pretty cool, huh? The green-haired girl jumped down from a tree, landing not too far from Kakuzu. So, am I enough of an asset for you to train now? The tall ninja looked at her for a long moment, considering the request. At length, he turned away, picked up the briefcase, and walked on. Do not call me, sensei, was all he said. LLL. Naruto had to admit that while Kakuzu was interesting to hang out with, having Fu around was a blessing. It was great to finally be able to have someone his own age to hang out with, even if the past 3 months since Fu's arrival had been somewhat busy. While Naruto had been adjusting to the random power surges of the new Suton and Doton chakras within him, Kakuzu had drilled Fu on all of her abilities. Unlike Naruto, who seemed to have been granted limitless chakra and elevated healing abilities, Fu's main ability allowed her to utilize the Jinten element, what she called dust release, a combination of wind and earth elements. Currently, both Naruto and Fu were waiting for Kakuzu in the usual training field on the outskirts of Onanji. Naruto eyed Fu using his peripheral vision, taking notice of her outfit change. She wore a short fishnet shirt under a slightly shorter white shirt which revealed her abdomen. White armlets covered her arms up to just past her elbows, and white ninja shoes protected her feet. A white skirt covered more fishnet material which went down to mid-thigh, and Fu's scored waterfall forehead protector was in place on her right bicep. An empty, red cylindrical bag hung on her back, held in place by crisscrossing red straps over her chest. Risque, he thought offhandedly. Kakuzu's curt greeting of, "Brat, Fu," cut off his thoughts. "How come you don't have a derogatory name for her?" pouted Naruto. "She has respect for me," he replied blandly, "and she does not annoy the shit out of me like you do." Naruto huffed indignantly, causing Fu to giggle lightly. "As for the real reason I am here," continued Kakuzu, "close your eyes and hold out your hands, brat." Naruto did as he was told, and seconds later he heard Fu gasp. He felt a brief sense of excitement before there was a swishing sound and Naruto lost the feeling in his right arm. He opened his eyes to find the black threads of Jiongu reconnecting his now severed right arm at the same junction it had done a year ago with his left one. "This is becoming a habit with you," Naruto told Kakuzu in a voice unfazed by his lack of appendage. "True," droned his teacher, "but I wanted to demonstrate to you the capabilities of your new weapon." Naruto's eyes found what the tall ninja was referring to, a wakizashi with a 12-inch glistening steel blade connected to a plain black handle. "Whoa," he murmured, reaching out with both hands as his right arm finished reattaching to his body. "You got this for me," he choked out. "For fuck's sake, do not get all emotional on me," Kakuzu chastised. "This will expand your thus far limited repertoire and aid in your wind chakra manipulation. I expect you to pay me back for that in the years to come. So are you gonna teach me how to use it?" Naruto asked, voice filled with awe as he sheathed and unsheathed the weapon over and over again. "No," scoffed the bounty hunter, "I have little use for such trivialities. So while I train your new friend here, you will serve under a kenjutsu master I managed to find for you." As Naruto quirked an eyebrow in curiosity, Kakuzu motioned towards the forest where two figures in black cloaks were appearing. The shorter of the two possessed raven black hair and blank crimson eyes, his face betraying no emotion whatsoever. The taller one rivaled Kakuzu's height, and carried a tremendous object wrapped in white bandages on his back. Naruto could only surmise that this man was to be his new teacher. "Does he have blue skin?" wondered the blonde as they got closer. He also noted slits in the man's neck, gills, and beady, bloodshot eyes that shone with a sadism which probably surpassed Kakuzu's own. "This is Hoshigaki Kisame, one of the former 7 shinobi swordsmen of the mist," Kakuzu introduced without emotion. "He will train you for the next year using whatever methods he so desires." Kisame grinned at this, revealing row upon row of sharp teeth. Naruto gulped slightly, but otherwise made no other move which revealed his emotions. "We're gonna have a good time, aren't we, fishbait?" chuckled Kisame. Naruto shot a scowl at Kakuzu, who completely ignored it, before following Kisame and the other man away from Onanji and northeast towards the Land of Lightning. Fu waved a rather tepid farewell before following Kakuzu in the opposite direction to continue her training. Both Jinchuriki had a long year ahead of them. LLL. OMAKE. Kakuzu wandered down the practically deserted street, Fu walking in front of him and gazing at the buildings in wonder. While he recognized that Naruto would start training with Kisame tomorrow and Fu needed a legitimate ninja uniform, he wasn't particularly happy about going out and spending more money on his wayward pupils. The bounty hunter was shaken from his musings by the sound of a bell chiming. He looked up to find Fu disappearing through the door of the same ninja supply shop he had visited years before. He gave a long-suffering sigh that betrayed his annoyance before waiting idly outside, a silent sentinel. 20 minutes later, the Seven Tails Jinchuriki reappeared dressed in the most ridiculous outfit Kakuzu had ever seen. While fishnet could be considered a staple of ninja attire, I failed to see the practicality of such stupid clothing choices, he criticized. It helps show off my girlish figure, Fu chirped. What figure? You have the body of a 12-year-old, he deadpanned. I am a 12-year-old, she huffed indignantly. Besides, I like it. These clothes allow me flexibility and room to grow into, so someday I can use my figure. Let us assume for a moment that all of that is true, allowed the tall ninja. What possible purpose does that serve? He pointed to the red, cylindrical object strapped to her back. No idea, she said, but it looks cool. Noticing the vein throbbing in Kakuzu's forehead, Fu smiled sheepishly and added, I'll find a use for it at some point. There was silence for a long moment as Kakuzu fought down the urge to kill the girl. I expect a full reimbursement, with interest, he threatened before walking away. Fu merely pumped her arm in excitement at having won the right to keep her new clothes. Suten, Sukoden no Jutsu. Naruto quickly stopped channeling chakra to his feet, allowing his body to plummet below the surface of the lake. The water shark bomb sailed harmlessly overhead, splashing mere feet away from where he had been standing. He mentally congratulated himself for his quick thinking, swimming quietly towards where Kisame was standing in the vain hope that the blue-haired man wouldn't know his location. The blonde Jinchuriki had been training on and off with the former Kirinin for roughly a year, the lessons stopping due to changing locations based on the missions Kisame and his partner had to go on. With those exceptions, they had stayed around an independent part of the land of hot water which called itself the Land of the Sea, a stretch of rural country between the lands of fire and lightning which bordered the ocean and dabbled in fishing. The area consisted of a large lake which sat in the middle of a dense, foggy forest. Judging by how well it was hidden and how well Kisame knew the area, Naruto could only assume that he often frequented the area for his own training. The nice thing about having Kisame as a teacher was that Naruto had learned more than just swordsmanship from the man. He had left Kakuzu before being able to take full advantage of the new elements surging within him. Fortunately, ex-Mist Shinobi Kisame had taught Naruto a bunch of common Suten moves that most Kirigakure-chunin knew, as well as the basis of some of the more difficult ones. It was, at the very least, more than Kakuzu had ever taught him in one sitting. As the year had passed, Naruto had noticed that he kept comparing Kisame to Kakuzu. While Kakuzu was ruthless, obsessed with money, and normally wouldn't do anything unless it benefited him in some way, Kisame was a strict taskmaster, forcing Naruto through motions again and again until he had perfected them. Comparatively, Kakuzu usually taught Naruto the bare minimum of what he felt the blonde needed to know and then left him to his own devices. Barring the obvious sadistic streak and bloodlust, there were very few similarities between the two giants. Besides teaching, the most useful contrast between the two was that Kisame was far more willing to talk than Kakuzu. So willing, in fact, that Naruto could swear planting him with the blue-skinned man had been part of Kakuzu's plan all along. That bastard would somehow find a way to make a gain by getting rid of me. Apparently, the black cloaks with red clouds that Kisame and his partner wore symbolized their affiliation with Akatsuki, an organization that Kisame described as being dedicated to world domination. The group was still somewhat new, having formed shortly before his birth, but it had already earned a reputation as an effective terrorist organization. According to Kisame, Akatsuki was currently focusing on attaining large sums of money in order to back their plan, which explained its interest in Kakuzu. The group operated in pairs, and Naruto found himself hard-pressed to find a stranger partnership than the one he was currently enmeshed in. Kisame's comrade was a stoic man by the name of Uchiha Itachi, the surname ringing a familiar bell with the blonde. It had taken a solid 2 weeks for Naruto to find out that information, the raven-haired man silent until Kisame had ribbed him into finally introducing himself. Naruto was constantly wary of Itachi. The Uchiha clan had taken no great strides in attempting to improve his former life in Konoha, and while he didn't know Itachi personally, he wasn't taking any chances. Additionally, while the Uchiha was an obvious missing nin from their home village, Naruto wasn't sure exactly what Itachi knew of him, if anything. Fortunately, the raven-haired man, while apparently in charge of the larger and more intimidating Kisame, had done little to nothing to interfere with or stop Naruto's training. Not that Itachi not interfering with his training made it any easier. Naruto swam up from beneath Kisame, mentally thanking the man for training him how to hold his breath for long periods of time. He stealthily began to rise to the surface, closing in on 20 feet away when his teacher looked down and grinned wickedly. The blonde had seen that look many times on the former Kirin in the past year and had learned that the amount of sharp, glistening teeth that could be seen in his mouth was a good indication of how much trouble he was in. Even from his current distance, Naruto felt like he could almost count each individual tooth. Ah, shit. Kisame clapped his hands together and then placed his right one on the surface of the lake. Suten, Goshokuzame. From each of his fingers came a shark made entirely of water, all of them swirling down through the lake and targeting the blonde. Naruto yelped in surprise, but only managed to release a stream of bubbles that the sharks promptly tore through. Thinking quickly, he formed 3 hand seals and began to rotate in place. Mizu no Tatsumaki, he thought. A swirling vortex of water formed around him, serving as protection and partially destroying all 5 sharks. He stopped spinning after several seconds and mentally sighed in relief. Okay, one obstacle avoided. Naruto looked up to see Kisame's grin grow wider. How is that possible? Before re-examining his surroundings. The sharks that he thought he had destroyed began to reform before his eyes, the water from the lake filling in the parts that his technique had destroyed. 1, he counted, 2, 3, 4, wait, where's the 5th? He turned around just in time to find the last shark bearing down upon him and resisted the urge to yelp in panic. Stretching out his arms and legs, Naruto caught the shark's wide jaws as it attempted to snatch him up. It thrashed violently, trying to shake the blonde off to attack him properly, but Naruto held on tight. Frustrated, the shark raced to the surface, breaking through the glass-like top of the lake at a breakneck speed. Fortunately for Naruto, the shark lost cohesion as soon as it lost contact with the water. Unfortunately for him, the momentum from the shark continued to propel him through the air. Ah! He screamed as he flew in an arc over the lake and towards the shore. He hit the ground clumsily, rolling head over feet before springing up with his wakizashi raised defensively. The large, bandaged weapon that Kisame affectionately called Samehada connected with Naruto's blade, forcing the blonde to dig his heels into the ground to keep his balance. Even so, the power behind the attack moved him back a solid foot. Naruto wasn't entirely sure why the blade had a name, but after fighting against it for the better part of a year, he wasn't about to question Kisame's methods, especially considering that he had yet to win against it. All he knew was that letting the bandaged weapon touch him was a bad idea. It stole his chakra and caused an annoying burning sensation that lasted for a while. Gotta gain leverage, Naruto sweated as Kisame applied more pressure to his weapon. Kei-hee-hee, laughed Kisame, it's over, fishbait. Naruto raised one eyebrow and opened his mouth to respond, but found himself, once again, surrounded by water, a strange sphere of the liquid that was levitating above the ground. Suiro no Jutsu, commented the Akatsuki member. You're completely immobilized. Forfeit, or I can take off a leg, he offered hopefully. Fine, grunted the blonde, you win. The water surrounding him collapsed suddenly, allowing him to fall to the earth, chest heaving slightly. Naruto craned his head and caught sight of a second Kisame behind him which promptly collapsed into water. Damn, he thought. He heard a heavy footfall in front of him and looked up to see Kisame standing there, Samehada once again strapped to the man's back by its leather harness. You did better than I thought you would, fishbait, Kisame told him. You're no master of either Suten or Kenjutsu, but you have enough skill to get by for now. Naruto grumbled half-heartedly, frustrated that he hadn't gotten closer to beating the giant sword wielder. The year is over, your training is done, spoke a bland voice from the trees. Both ninja looked over to see Itachi standing in front of a sturdy oak, his expression blank. Kakuzu is about a 4-hour walk in that direction, he pointed. Kisame, we have a mission. Let's go. Sure thing, Itachi. See you, round, fishbait. Maybe next time you'll have a chance at beating me. Kisame flashed one of his patented smirks at Naruto before following Itachi in the opposite direction the ex-Leaf Nin had pointed. Naruto waved a hand in farewell, mildly confused at the abrupt exit, then headed to where Kakuzu was waiting for him. LLL. If there was one thing that Naruto would grant Itachi, it was that the man was accurate to a fault. It took just over 4 hours to find Kakuzu and Fu waiting in a rather large clearing with a small pond nearby. Brat, Kakuzu greeted as Fu waved, I trust that your training went well. Fine, he replied quickly, trying hard not to compare Kisame's and Kakuzu's sadism. How was yours? He asked reflexively. Fruitful. It is amazing what one can accomplish when one has a competent student. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the tall ninja but chose not to rise to the bait. Did you get any other information? I knew it. The only reason you got Kisame to train me was to gather information on Akatsuki. He accused. It was not the only reason, I also wanted to get rid of you for a time. Naruto fought the urge to punch his first teacher in the face while Fu tried her hardest not to laugh. I ask again, what did you learn? Naruto told Kakuzu all of the information that he had gathered from Kisame about Akatsuki. The former Taki Nin digested it all with an unchanging expression, waiting until the blonde was done talking before humming in thought. While not overly useful, at least you managed to figure out something, Kakuzu admitted. As a result, I will allow you an opportunity to claim a reward. How unusually gracious of you, Naruto deadpanned. What's the reward, Kakuzu? Fu asked. This year, the biannual Chunin exams are being held in Konoha, Kakuzu explained. They are open to all allied countries, meaning that ninja from Am, Taki, Kusa, and Suna will be there competing against Konoha. If you truly want revenge against Konoha's populace for its treatment of you, the Chunin exams will be your best opportunity to infiltrate the village and decide how to do so. You'd be willing to enter me in the Chunin exams, just to help me get vengeance. You and Fu, corrected the bounty hunter. Naruto cheered and Fu gave him a quick hug in celebration, but Kakuzu interrupted by clearing his throat. However, you have to defeat me first. Say what? 2-on-1, Kakuzu explained. If you can kill me just once, I will assist you in entering the Chunin exams. If not, we will find some pricey shinobi to kill, reap the bounties, and you can eventually find your own way to get revenge, should you so desire. Okay, so, when do we start? Fu asked. Now, stated the taller ninja, detaching both fists from his wrists and allowing Jiongu's tendrils to carrying them towards his students. Fu rolled to the right to avoid Kakuzu's left hand, while Naruto, shorter than the girl, bent backwards to avoid the other one. The blonde grunted as he fell on his rear, Fu charging in to attack Kakuzu. She threw a hasty punch that Kakuzu maneuvered around, spinning in almost slow motion and delivering a powerful roundhouse kick to her back. Fu skidded head over feet along the ground, grinding to a halt a short distance away from where Naruto was currently seated. Comfortable, he offered. Fu coughed once, spitting to the side and rising to her feet. Very, she retorted sarcastically. Naruto grinned in response, waiting until Fu's eyes met his own before exchanging nods with her. The unspoken message was simple, both would distract their teacher and take advantage of any opening the other could garner. Fu darted around in a semicircle, stopping 50 feet behind Kakuzu. Naruto rose to his feet and settled into a fighting stance, prompting Kakuzu to raise an eyebrow. For 3 seconds, only the wind rustling through the foliage made any motion. Finally, Kakuzu turned around to face Fu instead of Naruto, an action which raised the blonde boy's ire. What? Suddenly she's more important than I am. That bastard, I'll show him. He charged his teacher, Fu following suit shortly thereafter. 5 feet away from Kakuzu, Naruto suddenly stopped, and then fell flat on his face. I see Kisame did not beat your impetuousness out of you. Your pride will be your undoing one day, criticized Kakuzu as Fu closed in on him. Naruto looked at his feet, blue eyes widening in surprise at the black tendrils wrapped around them. He quickly followed the trail to where the tendrils disappeared into the bottom of his teacher's cloak. That's resourceful, I wonder how long that took to master. Naruto didn't have long to wonder. Fu arrived on the scene, throwing another, harder punch at Kakuzu, who, unable to dodge, caught it. As the girl reared her other hand back, the black threads holding Naruto lifted from the ground, spinning him around and slinging him in the direction of the pond. Not again, he complained, creating a large splash as he hit the water and sank deep. Meanwhile, Kakuzu had caught Fu's second punch and the two were locked in a struggle of strength that the older ninja was winning. Too weak, thought Fu, sweating in exertion as the older Nukanen pushed her backwards, the black tendrils of Jiongu wriggling around her like snakes. Then, struck by inspiration, she used Kakuzu's grip to flip her body, landing both feet in a solid connection with the underside of Kakuzu's chin. His head snapped back, and the Bijuu Jinchuriki took advantage of the broken deadlock by back-flipping away and rotating the pain from her wrists. Clever, complimented Kakuzu, rolling his neck back into its proper position. But how will you follow it up? Like this. shouted a different voice. Suten, Bakusui Shoha. A medium-sized wave of water rose from the lake, Naruto riding its peak as he directed it towards Kakuzu, Fu backpedaling swiftly and finding purchase among some tree branches. Ha! Panted Naruto. Take this, he cried as the wave broke over his teacher. After half a minute, the water settled into a relatively small area, only a couple inches deep. Fu abandoned the tree she was in, applying chakra to stand on top of the water like Naruto was doing far across from her. Too much for ya, eh, Kakuzu? Taunted Naruto, his irritation at his teacher granting him cockiness. Arrogance must be earned, brat. You overestimate your power, replied the bounty hunter, rising slowly from his crouch between the two Jinchuriki. I see that Kisame taught you more than mere swordsmanship. However, he continued, reaching his full 6-foot height, do not presume to defeat a former Suten expert with his own weapon. Naruto, currently facing the former Taki Nin, scrunched his face in disgust and pointed at Kakuzu. UW, he whined childishly, what the hell happened to your face? Kakuzu's eyes darted momentarily to the water, and after noticing a scrap of black fabric floating away, reached up with one hand to feel his head covering. The triangular piece that normally covered his mouth and nose was missing, revealing his full face to Naruto for the first time. The bridge of Kakuzu's nose looked permanently aged, a crease right below where the mask normally covered. Naruto was briefly reminded of Itachi and the distinctive, premature stress lines he possessed just below his eyes. However, the truly disturbing part about Kakuzu was his mouth, over half of which was essentially stitched shut. From what he could see, 3 loops of thread kept the former Taki Nin's mouth sewed closed on either side. Is that a side effect of Jiongu? Naruto posed hesitantly. Kakuzu reached down and picked up the fabric, reattaching it to the white head covering and glaring daggers at the blonde. Nothing comes without a price, he stated at last, something I am sure I have taught you already. And everybody ages, something which I thought I would not have to teach you. His piece said, Kakuzu's fist shot forward with lightning quickness, nailing Naruto in the sternum and belly before he could react. The older ninja's hands sunk in a little deeper before Naruto turned into water. He anticipated my move. Perhaps the brat has learned something after all. I see that Kisame also taught you how to perform Mizu Bunshin, Kakuzu called to the air. That is good, it is a very useful technique, provided you have the water to use it. Kisame-senpai did a really good job with my training, affirmed Naruto, rising from the pond. Granted, I need water to use the Bakusui Shoha and he doesn't, and mine definitely isn't as powerful as his, but he did open up my moveset a little bit. Now, let's continue, he said, settling into an offensive stance again. Kakuzu nodded in recognition, but before he could move, he found a spike of earth protruding from his chest. Sorry, Kakuzu, commented Fu, a foot-long piece of earth formed around her hand, but it looks like we win. Nice job distracting him, Naruto. Not quite, Kakuzu told her, a steely glint in his eyes. Just like Naruto had, he dissolved into water, but instead of completely collapsing the liquid flowed around and over Fu, encasing her in a bubble held in place by the Mizu Bunshin. Oh crap, complained Naruto, recognizing the water prison technique his battling partner was now trapped in. He reached behind and placed one hand cautiously on the handle of his sword before gazing around intently, wary of his teacher. Where are you? He sing-songed nervously. That was when a hand reached up through the earth and grabbed Naruto's leg, surprising him. Ah! He cried as he was forcibly pulled into the ground up to his shoulders. Kakuzu rose smoothly from the earth, grabbed the wakizashi from its sheath on Naruto's back, and fluidly moved it next to Naruto's throat. Yield, he commanded. Naruto growled in frustration but acquiesced to defeat for the second time that day. The water clone holding Fu collapsed, dropping the girl to the ground on hands and knees. Kakuzu brushed minuscule specks of dirt from his shoulders as he manipulated the earth around Naruto by channeling chakra through his feet. The blonde pulled free seconds later, hauling himself out of the ground and irritably swiping his weapon from the bounty hunter. I didn't even get to pull off my best moves, he pouted. Such a shame, drawled Kakuzu sarcastically. Fu walked over and patted Naruto's shoulder sympathetically. I am sure your potential must far surpass what you displayed, he continued in the same dry tone, clearly mocking his student. Hell yeah. What exactly was the purpose of that exercise? Asked Fu. Did you really think we would win, or were you just trying to prove a point? The latter. I wanted to make sure there were no misconceptions about the difference between our power levels, even in a 2-on-1 fight. Also, I felt that the brat needed to relearn respect, just to unlearn any bad habits Kisame may have taught him. Now come, you lost, and we have money to make. Actually, Kakuzu-san, I'd like to interrupt your plans. Naruto and Fu's heads snapped around in surprise, a direct contrast to Kakuzu's slow and purposeful turn. Standing under the shade of a copse of trees was a strange woman wearing a black cloak with red clouds, some sort of white flower stuck in her blue hair. Naruto, apparently mesmerized by the stud stuck underneath the woman's lower lip, leaned into Kakuzu without averting his eyes and whispered, "Who's she?" "I do not know," admitted the other man, "but staring like an idiot does not seem to be getting you anywhere. I was once told by a man named Zetsu," Kakuzu stated a little louder, "that anybody wearing that outfit is a member of Akatsuki." "That is correct," confirmed the woman. "My name is Conan, and I'm the second in command of the organization. Might I have a word with you privately?" Kakuzu nodded and took a step forward, pausing momentarily to throw over his shoulder, "Listen in and I will kill you." The two Jinchuriki jumped slightly, but quickly nodded in understanding. "What do you want?" he demanded upon reaching Conan. "We," she emphasized, "would like you to reconsider your offer to go to the Chunin exams." The former Taki Nin's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "How long were you spying on us?" "Long enough," began Conan, "to know that your students have great potential and that you are the best option we have to complete our plans. While your concern for me and my students is touching," he drawled cynically, "I am not in the habit of breaking my word, and as the brats did not beat me, we are not going to Konoha," he finished firmly. Kakuzu turned around and prepared to walk away, but was stopped by what Conan's next words. "We know you are in possession of the Nanabi." The older ninja refocused his attention upon the blue-haired woman, silently prompting her to continue. "We could easily remove her from your presence, if we so desired. Even you could not stand against so many other S-class shinobi. I will hear you out." "Thank you," Conan bowed. "You have heard of Orochimaru." Orochimaru, renowned as the Snake Sannin of Konoha and one of its most infamous traitors. "Few people have not heard of him," he snorted derisively. "Why? We want you to kill him." Kakuzu raised an eyebrow at this statement. While not entirely outside the realm of possibility, the fight would be a difficult one, Kakuzu conceded. "Tell me why." 13 years ago, Orochimaru joined Akatsuki after defecting from Konoha, Conan explained. When Uchiha Itachi joined 7 years later, Orochimaru attempted to steal his body, but ended up failing. He was forced to flee the organization, taking his ring with him. "His ring?" Kakuzu interrupted. "The rings are the most important symbol of a person's affiliation with Akatsuki," she told him, flashing her own ring in the process. "However, that's merely one reason we want him gone. Orochimaru's current plans involve the 12-year-old container of the Ichibi. The Ichibi, and from what Zetsu has told me, that would interfere with your plans. I can only assume that this container will be present at the Chunin exams," Kakuzu extrapolated. Conan nodded. "From the intelligence we've been able to gather thus far, he plans on using the powers of the Jinchuriki to invade Konoha and take vengeance upon the village by destroying it. A universal plan, it seems," muttered the bounty hunter. "And if I refuse to cooperate?" Conan's eyes darted to where Fu and Naruto were standing. "We'll take her and extract the Bijuu, killing her in the process." Kakuzu seemed to consider it for a moment, prompting Conan to finish her offer. "We're also allowing you to keep the money his head is worth." "Done," agreed Kakuzu without hesitation. "That is too large a sum of money to pass up simply because of principle. However, the brats will need a third teammate. If you would like my services, you will need to provide a competent and obedient person who can serve as one." Conan remained silent for a long moment, her eyes appearing slightly unfocused. "Very well," she conceded at length, returning her attention to Kakuzu. "Your last student will be waiting for you at one of our hideouts within the Land of Fire, near the border with the Land of Rice Paddies. We appreciate your cooperation, Kakuzu-san." Her piece said. Conan's figure appeared to ripple, breaking apart into hundreds of pieces of paper to be carried away by the wind. Kakuzu watched her disappear in silence. "The shinobi of Akatsuki have very unique abilities. I would fit in quite easily, and would also do well to remain on the good side. Even with my skill, working against them would be hindering." He walked over to his students, who were currently engaged in a rock-paper-scissors battle, and kicked both of them. Get up, he commanded. It appears that you will get your wish after all. What do you mean? Asked Fu, standing up alongside Naruto. The tall ninja sighed wearily. Despite my desire to the contrary, we are headed to Konoha. Really? Naruto exclaimed, excitement visibly pulsing throughout his body. Even though we lost to you. What did that lady say? What have I told you about looking a gift horse in the mouth, brat? Kakuzu snapped. For now, simply accept your stroke of good fortune. Let us depart, we must pick up your wayward third teammate to be eligible for the Chunin exams. Another headache to look forward to, he grumbled. As Kakuzu led Naruto and Fu west toward the land of rice paddies, the two Jinchuriki high-fived in victory, discussing in quiet tones the upcoming Chunin exams. LLL. A large quantity of paper fluttered into the center of a large forest in the southeastern part of the Land of Fire. They came together to reveal Conan, looking no worse for wear despite the strange method of travel. She held her ring, which displayed the character, Byako, up to a sturdy tree, unveiling a white sheet of paper that was only one part of a complex sealing technique meant to ward off interlopers. The blue-haired woman walked straight into the tree, causing it to ripple slightly, and descended down a stairwell into a humongous open cavern. The cavern was void of all but two objects, one of which was near the back. A massive stone statue stood there, the top of which came only a couple 100 feet shy of hitting the ceiling. Spikes jutted out from behind the face, which possessed 9 eyes, 2 rows of 4 with a giant one in the middle to make the face symmetrical, all of which were closed. A stone scroll with a chain running through it was held by the statue's mouth, and 2 large hands, handcuffed together, jutted up from the ground, coming to about the statue's chin. The other figure was, surprisingly enough, even more imposing than the statue, a man of average build with spiky orange hair and the traditional cloak of Akatsuki. He turned around upon hearing footfalls, his ringed gray eyes, a series of concentric circles, boring holes into the new arrival. Kakuzu accepted the terms we set forth, stated Conan. Receiving no acknowledgement that she was heard, she continued, what are our plans, N.A., Pain? The gray-eyed man remained completely silent, but despite his unnerving stare and emotionless facade, Conan waited patiently for an answer. Kakuzu has agreed to take care of Orochimaru, Pain remarked at length, who has been a thorn in our side for far too long. Even if he has never acted directly against us, his defection and plans have stalled us unnecessarily. I still don't understand why we didn't just take him out when we had the chance, Conan pointed out. Pain blinked slowly, the only motion he made in response to his companion's query. Orochimaru is clever and resourceful. He has contacts in most of the countries the world over, and knows how to stay under the radar and manipulate the underground. Until now, we have been spread too thin to dedicate resources to attack him, but with Zetsu's most recent information, we can finally begin our real plans, finished Conan. The Bijuu. Conan's partner nodded once. Correct. Zetsu and Sasori have managed to piece together enough information to deduce that Orochimaru plans on using Ichibi no Shukaku to destroy Konohagakure during the third portion of the Chunin exams. I know, Conan intoned impatiently, you made sure that I knew at least that much to get Kakuzu on board. However, what Orochimaru doesn't know is that we will also be there, Pain told her. And we will capitalize on his upcoming failure. The blue-haired woman nodded in understanding. And the girl. I can only assume you were referring to the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi no Kabutamushi, Pain guessed. At Conan's confirming nod, he continued, for now, we leave her. Kakuzu is a valuable asset and we would do well to not endanger our current partnership with him by overextending our reach. What was his relationship with the children? Conan's eyes adopted a faraway look, trying to recall her conversation with Kakuzu. I don't know the man well enough to make an accurate judgment. He might care enough to pose an obstacle when we target the Nanabi, but if there's more incentive for him in her death, he would probably go along with the plan. Then we leave her alone, Pain repeated, along with the boy. Conan arched one perfectly thin eyebrow in confusion. The boy, you mean the blonde child with him? Pain turned around, eyeing all 9 closed eyes of the giant statue. Yes. Or, if you'd prefer, the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko, the most powerful of the Bijuu. The woman's eyes widened by a fraction. What? When did you find this out? Itachi informed me earlier today when I assigned him and Kisame the newest mission, Pain explained. Since the QB needs to be sealed last anyway, it would appear to be doubly beneficial to keep Kakuzu near us as much as possible, especially following the Chunin exams. Keeping track of the two Jinchuriki will be much easier with their teacher close at hand and their power already in our clutches. So, we wait until the right time then, concluded Conan. Yes. Soon enough, our plans will begin in earnest. The orange-haired man stared at the second eye from the left on the top row of eyes. 1 down, 8 to go. Then, the world shall finally know peace, through true pain. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.